Mark,
What's happening?
what's going on?
A lot.
Two, two. We've got two tie-in issues this week. Spoiler alert, I think they were both really good, but we'll get into each of them right after we take a look at this. So welcome back to episode 14. Yes,
Wow.
this is episode 14
Who's
of
counting?
DC Comics Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths Deep Dive. I am Paul Cook. That is Mark from Legion of Comics. Before we get started, don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notification button so that you're notified whenever we upload new content. Make sure you comment because we'll be having a huge, huge giveaway at the end of all of these. We are deep into the blood and guts of Dark Crisis now. Um, and this week, we had actually two tie-in issues. We had the Final Flash issue of Dark Crisis, the Dark Crisis tie-in, and we just went over the midpoint of the Dark Crisis Young Justice miniseries. So, which one do you want to start with?
Let's start with Young Justice because Flash hits the main title proper.
Correct. Okay. Um, so, I shouldn't have done that, but
I
that's
like that.
okay.
It
You
really
can never
just
hear that too
we
many
got the
times.
momentum back.
Exactly. Um, So, if you recall, at the end of the last issue, basically the three heroes, Superboy and Impulse and Robin, were told that they needed to kind of get on board with staying in the world where they are, and since they wouldn't do it on their own, they were going to be forced to do it by basically the Justice League and the Teen Titans. And so we start right up in issue number 4, where we left off, and we immediately see Superboy, who seems to be kind of backpedaling a little bit. It seemed as though in the last issue he kind of realized that this something wasn't up, but now he seems to actually kind of be back to where he was. Maybe he's liking this world a little bit more than he thought, and maybe it's because he's fighting people that he knows and loves, or who knows why. But
Yeah, it was a little weird. It was a little back and forth. Like we had that moment where he's kind of fed up with the fighting and he went to go use his tactile telekinesis to really get to the bottom of it. When he did it, it affected the reality they were in and their ability to hear. Like
right.
So it's like when he noticed that it seemed like he was onto something, and no one was listening. It was
Yeah,
a
it did.
little
It
weird
did
there.
something to the sound waves,
Hmm.
his telekinesis. Um, Meanwhile, we got everybody coming at, Superboy and Impulse and Tim Drake, all of them basically saying, begging them, to stay where they are, to just agree to stay where they are. Um, we even have Superboy Prime, not the bad Superboy Prime, but a regular Superboy Prime, even saying, for truth and for justice. He throws out that line. So, um,
Hmm.
but again, none of the heroes really believe that. But then finally, the Superboy from Young Justice um, says, "Well, what if we, obviously, something's going on, and um, he says that they can't win, so why don't they just stop?"
Stop and just accept it.
Right.
He I guess like trying to talk them into staying because it's better didn't work. Now he's trying a new tactic, like we can't win. You can't beat him, join him, kind of thing.
Right. Right. And Tim Drake basically says, "What are you, crazy? Have you
Have
lost
you
your
lost
mind?"
your mind? Yeah.
Right. And then we switch back to um, uh, San Francisco, the Titans Tower. We have Cassie, we have Sissy, we have the Red Tornado. Basically going into the Titans Tower, and going into basically what is the underground, for lack of a better term, as he says, a mausoleum.
Mhm.
where there are basically statues of all of the dearly departed Titans over the years. And in there is Connor, Superboy, is Diana
Donna,
Troy.
mhm,
Um, uh,
Jericho,
exactly. Um,
Tara.
so this, right. So they're all there. And um, Cassie and Sissy start to have another one of their arguments about how neither one seemed to have felt as though they were there for each other when they needed them the most, basically. Um, and Red Tornado then decides that he needs to go, and they need to go, and they need to find what's going on, and so they end up taking the invisible Wonder Jet.
Yeah, they ended up getting
And
that from Themyscira. They went to
right,
Titan's Tower to find a ride. They wanted to get a jet. They couldn't find one, so Cassie pulled some strings, and 12 hours later, they're flying the invisible jet from Themyscira. I thought that was awesome.
yeah, this must be nice. Let me just make a phone call. I'll get a jet
Mm,
for you. It's better
Good
than
thing
than a, than
Hippolyta
Nebula.
owed me a favor. That one line of dialogue, and we're set. The power of the plot, sometimes it just works.
Yep. And so as they're flying to their destination, they end up with space mites.
Space mites hate it when that happens.
I know, it's like, because that'll cause a lot of turbulence probably.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, then we switch back to the fight again, and it basically then we it starts to get a little bit even more personal between the three. Um, Superboy basically uh, claims that the reason why he doesn't want to go back to where he was is because Tim Drake doesn't want to go back to where they were, is because he thinks that he had a better life without him.
Yeah, he's
And then
playing the victim card heavily. Like, no one's listening to me. Y'all were all just happy that I was gone. Nobody likes me.
yeah, and then that's when Tim Drake goes and says, do you really think that nothing happened? Do you really think it didn't ruin my life? Like I didn't try to find a way to clone you to bring you back. And then the line that I think is great, like I didn't change my whole costume to honor you. It's just a great line in the story.
I said
Um,
they're referring to his death at the hands of Superboy Prime, aren't they?
yes. Yep.
So yeah, that was the era where he went from looking like Robin to Red Robin, right?
Right. Right. Exactly. And so um, they end up uh, they just you keep battling the Justice League and the Titans, um, and then finally they just say, "Hey, you know what? We have to stop this." Um, and we then flash back again, back into space, where Sissy is now going out of um, uh, the invisible jet.
Invisible Jet. Yeah,
She's going to demite the plane,
with a
basically.
bow and arrow,
Right.
because that's the
And
best
so
for demiting invisible space jets. It
yeah.
might be. I haven't had to do it firsthand. It might be.
um, and so as she's doing that, then uh, we then flash back to the trio, and here now we finally find out who it is that's behind everything that's going on with Young Justice, um, and we basically find out that it's Mickey Mixes-Pitalik, who is basically saying. They don't know who he is at the very beginning. They're like, it's Mrs. Pitalik, and he's like, and Connor's like, that's the creepy old guy, and he's like, no, it's me, it's the son of the great Mr. Mixes-Pitalik, and he says, I'm your biggest fan, which is how Mixes-Pitalik first introduced himself to Superman. He was his biggest fan, which is why you have to stay here, or you ruin our childhood, and it ends on a great line, I think. The whole story is Connor says, "Great, now I'm thinking of Mr. Pitalik having sex because he's got a son."
So when he said that line, which is why you have to stay here or you'll ruin our childhood, he said our, not mine. Our. Do you think he was referring to him and them, or that there might be more than just Mickey?
Yeah, or is Yeah, I think it is. I'm thinking there's still part that we don't know about yet. Um, like, is Mickey really the son of Mrs. Pitalik, or is he maybe the embodiment of a young Mr. and Mrs. Pitalik? Because there's been nothing whatsoever through any story to ever indicate that Mrs. Pitalik had any children at all.
So this
Uh,
would be the first appearance of this character in this book. Then
this could be this is a key.
we're retiring on this book right here,
It's right.
right here. So I thought
When
this
he,
was a great. I thought this was a great issue. Like one of the things that has been fun about this series is the fact that the Young Justice has been sidelined. You know, these characters have been overshadowed and sidelined due to the legacy characters that have come after them that are getting more time to shine. The fact that this was an action-packed issue with a bunch of familiar heroes and stuff, especially from a couple decades ago, was really fun. Seeing the character and costume designs and everything, but then we got an action-packed issue with them hitting on these personal notes, kind of addressing that time gap. You know, because that's a real time gap for us readers that they're addressing, that it did affect these characters. Like their relationships are fractured because even we haven't seen them together. They haven't been together either inside this universe. And I thought that was played so well with this issue, balanced out. Instead of just having them sitting there around a table with like this heavy dialogue, they coupled it with this dynamic fight scene. Like we didn't get into a lot of the details, but you have like Robin having to stab Superboy in the chest with kryptonite while they're fighting, dodging tridents from Aquaman. Like it was a very dynamic issue to get such like a character movement as well. I thought that was great.
yeah, and the other thing too that I really liked about this too is it explored the fact of some of the issues that we had with issue number two, I think,
Yeah,
because it
Nick, you
talked about
addressed.
the fact. I mean, when we're reading these comics, we're reading them as though an adult is telling us what's going on with these particular actions that are going on. But this clearly states that everything that's happened has basically been like a kid. It's been a kid's view of what's going on. So that's why we had all those issues in issue number two that
Yeah.
didn't seem as though it was right.
So yeah, they address that in the reveal page at the end. It's Bart who finally stopped and focused, and he realized the vibrational frequencies are off, and all these memories. We're dealing with our memories, but they're not our memories. This is
Right.
somebody else's memories of us. This is like a
Right.
child remembering what we did, and then we get a child in control of all of this.
Right. So I
So
thought
yeah,
that was really.
definitely brought that back.
Mhm. And so the last two issues will deal with how the trio deal with Mickey Mrs. Pitalik or whatever happened there. And so I'm really looking forward to where the rest of the series goes now.
Yeah, and another thing that this did is also establish itself as separate from Worlds Without a Justice League, where each of those heroes are inside of a world of pariahs making, where they're single-handedly being used to fuel his machine. This we don't have an explanation of why they're here, how this ties to Dark Crisis, and what. So there should be some kind of bringing it back in. Like, why were these characters pulled? Is this just a random 6-issue thing that has Dark Crisis on it for no reason,
Mhm.
or what? How's it
Yeah,
really going to connect?
right. Because I mean, it seems as though other than these are kind of the three legacy characters that have the potential to be left out of what's going on, because these are three legacy characters that have already been surpassed by even other characters. Um,
Mhm.
it'll be interesting to see if they use that somehow to tie it into the main story.
Yeah, very
Uh,
interesting to see where it goes. It's been a blast. It's been a
yeah,
blast. I forgive. Issue 2 gets a lot of forgiveness. There's still some head wounds from it, but it makes a lot more sense now.
yep, it does. And so then we have Flash number 786. This is issue number
Woo!
4 of the 4-issue tie-in. I remember you texted me and you said you loved it, how much you loved it, and then you're like, from page one you'll love it, and I did. From page one, I
From
loved
page
it.
one, it starts on a high note and it stays there all the way throughout. Before I got this issue, I assumed this is going to be the calm after the storm. We got Barry back in that last one. He's taking off, doing his thing. So what is this going to be? Wally and the family coming home and hugging it out and just kind of nope. Total opposite.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. We open up to basically, and interesting. I loved it because it's got the Titans, it's got the JSA, but then basically it has basically Donna Troy, Wonder Girl, basically kind of taking the lead and telling everybody where they're going to be going across the world to try to deal with what's going on. Um,
Yeah, this is straight out of the pages of Dark Crisis at this point. In that last issue of Dark Crisis, we saw the return of the JSA earlier, but we saw them catching up to speed with the Titans, our foremost leaders in the on the DCU right now with the JSA JLA gone, and that's where we start with them in that meeting still. You know, we just saw them all separating, trying to stop back Deathstroke Army, but now they have other stuff they have to do. It's cool to see that they're still together. We have a lot of really good signs of good editorial in this issue. You know, like they're really got it together for this.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's just and so one of them asked, how are we going to get to all these different places before they disappear? And then on page 2, you get the entire Flash family running into the picture.
What a shot, too. You know, they're all just sliding in.
Hmm. And then there's also just, I mean, the editorial, like you said, is great and everything, but the writing here, Jeremy Adams, especially with the kids, he just like, Jay is like, he's like, why do you wear a hat? He's
No,
talking
yeah, he
to,
didn't. He didn't let off of him either.
yeah,
Yeah. So Wally's kid was dogging Roy Harper this whole issue for wearing a ball cap.
right. he's like, why do you wear a hat? He's like, because I like it. He's like, are you sure?
Yeah. Like, why do you like it? Yeah, so we start this issue off, and it's just the Flash family, the Titans, and the JSA all making a coordinated plan with the Bat family to spread out across the world and try to go attack these problems systematically. And they want to use the speed of the Flash family to get there before these armies can dip, because that's what they tend to do. They show up, cause havoc, and bail. And we have Wally's kids wanting to join, and his wife Linda as well wanting to join to keep an eye on the kids, because at this point they've accepted that they have powers. They're not going to have that same old argument. Can't let them get hurt, this and that. Like, we are a unit, we are a family, we run as one. And I thought that was cool that we just push past that in a couple of panels, address it, and then Linda suited up. That was
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah, and we have basically Irie. Yeah, it's just a great picture. But we have Irie saying, you've always told us that that we have to practice. Practice makes perfect, And so she's like, I really can't argue. And then we find out later that it was basically Wally who gave the kids the argument to give to Linda.
Yeah, he set him up. In that
Yeah,
one panel where she turned at him, he made that face.
yeah,
Like, it was perfect. Perfect.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a great. It was the Linda's costume was made by Mr. Terrific. The second smartest man in the world, I think, right? Or the smartest man in the world. Um,
Depends on who you ask, I guess.
exactly, exactly. Um, and so they all then decide to go off on their ways. And it's funny because then, the other person is, I mean, Jay is like, he is just brutal. He's also brutal with Damien as well. Sorry, that was Irie, who basically says, "My mom says that people who are mean are just making up for their own
Insecurities.
insecurities." Right. Um,
Yeah, these kids are savages.
right. Exactly. Um, and Damien, is battling someone, and Irie comes and saves him, and Damien says, "I had that under control," and Irie says, "The proper response is thank you."
And then spoiler said she's the best. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
um,
kids are just at that no filter age. They don't sit there and try to play everyone's games. They're just straightforward with them. It's hilarious.
right. And then we get a call back to something that hasn't been seen in a while, but there was a while where the Wally and Animal Man and his family used to hang out together, and so we see them back together again, and they're battling gorillas, um, and they dispatch with the they almost dispatch with the gorilla until Linda comes in and basically throws the gorilla in like a Hulk style way almost. Throws the gorilla as far away as she possibly can. And so then we move on to the zombie island.
Yeah, this is
Almost.
like the meat and potatoes of the issue right here.
Right.
This little issue. We did have a 2-page splash where we see just everyone spread out everywhere, dealing with stuff everywhere. We focused a little bit more on the Animal Man, and then we focused heavily on this one. This was like the meat and potato event that we dealt with.
Right, and we get some of that, some of the training. Power Girl teaches Jay how to do the clap that has the waves that extend out from it, and do everything. And he of course loves that. And then we see someone that we haven't seen in a while who's on the island, and it is basically Clarion the Witch Boy, with some of the people from this issue basically hanging behind him, and we hear something that is kind of almost not really a throwaway, but it's like it happens twice in this issue. We hear the term the fraction, and so the fraction is, I believe, either something that is going to be causing the next big event with magic. Or they may show up before the end of Dark Crisis on Infinite Earths. Who knows?
I think it's going to be like the Justice League Dark version of the Magic villains.
Right. And because Clarion says, "I can see the fraction; they're on their way, and you aren't ready, even with your mind. None of us are." And so he's starting to set up exactly the next big bad that'll attack the DC universe, I think. And he basically says, magic is broken, order and chaos. Chaos is ruling now. Order is broken. And while he's busy giving his little dialogue,
Yeah, a little monologue, villain speech.
Yeah, exactly. Because all villains have to give a speech. Basically, Wally West has basically drawn into the ground all the little
sigils,
magical sigils that'll keep him from being able to do anything. And so he ends up trapped in this bubble, and we don't really see him again. But then we basically see at the end now a Flash running off, and he hears something that says, "You aren't fast enough, Flash. Not for what's coming. Not for the chaos or the fraction."
The fraction. Yeah, that was a little weird. Like to have like just such what could potentially be a big teaser right in there. I can only assume, and I can only hope really as well, that it was included in this because of the JSA's participation in this. So I'm thinking that it could either be for that next big build up, or it could be for something that's going to be addressed in the upcoming JSA series. That's a 12-issue series.
Right. Yeah, and it's
because it was Alan that addressed magic being broken in the last issue of Dark Crisis. It was Alan that took him down to the Justice League Dark, and now we have Clarion addressing magic again, and this was a JSA heavy issue.
Right, because besides Dr. Fate, Alan Scott's ring is kind of a mixture of magic and science. Mm-hmm. So it has this mystical facets as well. So I love what it did for the main series, adding to the main series. But again, it also kind of made me excited for what's going to be coming probably after this as well, which is, I think, what you really all you can expect from any issue to do is to satisfy you in the moment, but also get you pumped for the future as well.
Yeah. So. And big shout out to Jeremy Adams. Like a couple of the high notes from this book was seeing the JSA working with the Flash family and seeing, like you said, like how much this helped develop the main body of Flash outside of the Dark Crisis. But we see his family operating so well together. The kids even learning how to work with each other, with Irie running with him on her back and stopping immediately so he could fly off like a power ball to just crash into things and create an explosion. We saw Power Girl, like you say, show him, since she noticed he had super strength, show him how to create like the sonic clap and everything. there's really cool attention to detail with this like little historical aspect of this island of Nazi zombies. It was an old Nazi hideout island, and they kind of address how like all these hidden bases are found all throughout time since World War II, and apparently all of these soldiers were locked inside this base where they all perished. Somebody had the army just sitting there waiting dead, and was just able to animate them, and that's that explanation. I thought that was eerie, and they had to fight their way into that bunker to get down to Clarion. I thought that was just definitely eerie, just the thought of all of these soldiers locked inside their own bunker to the point of perishing. Like
Yeah.
there's a lot of weight to this story in this book, and it was fun all while this was going on. Like it was a lot to it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was a great way to tie off the 4 issues. Now it'll kind of start. Next issue, although we won't be covering it, but next issue is a huge pro wrestling issue.
Yeah, it said next issue, the Flash becomes a pro wrestler.
Right.
Okay, I'm in.
Maybe he'll do a flash bomb.
Yeah, exactly. Do a flash bomb.
And then we'll get into the 60-second war comes after that. So huge storyline coming up in the Flash as well. So who knows? Maybe we'll talk about that sometime in the future as well. So, but it was a great week. I don't think anything comes out this week, if I'm not mistaken. I don't think so. It's the last week of the month. So then we'll have, I think, probably in 2 weeks, we may have Dark Crisis number 5, I think, is probably in 2 weeks. Or in 2 weeks, I believe. So we'll be looking forward to that. But again, don't forget, make sure you like this. Make sure you hit the notification button. Make sure you leave a comment because we will be having a huge giveaway. When I say huge, I mean huge. You can have the potential. You could win the entire Dark Crisis event. What I mean by the entire event is not just the main title, but all the tie-ins, all of the bonuses, and there'll even be some extras thrown in, like maybe some variant covers, maybe a foil cover, who knows. So it's gonna be huge, in the words of a former president. It's gonna be huge.
Huge.
So don't forget, make sure you make sure you like, subscribe. Make sure you subscribe if you're not. Make sure you subscribe to Mark and his channel as well. But as of right now, because he's got a 1,500 subscriber thing coming up as well very soon. Yeah. So, but that's going to be it for this edition of DC Dark Crisis Deep Dive. I am Paul Cook.
And I'm Mark.
Yeah, but we are
Legion. You're not leaving Sector 2815.